Welcome, dear horror listener. You're tuning into Horror Radio, and I'm truly grateful you're here. Whether you're a long-time listener or just stumbled upon this channel, thank you for joining me for another scary tale. If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and means more than you know. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, what brought you here, or even what kind of story you'd like to hear next. Your support keeps this channel going, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let's get into today's horror story. It happened last July, during one of those Midwest heat waves that makes you feel like the air itself is trying to smother you. My cousin Nina and I were visiting Chicago for the week, staying with some relatives in Joliet while her dad, Uncle Chris, used up some vacation time. We were both excited to get out of our usual routines, her from summer classes in Cincinnati, me from wasting too many hours scrolling in a dark bedroom with the blinds shut in Columbus. On that particular day, we took the train into the city early, around 9 a.m., with plans to explore a bit before the Cubs game that night. We hit all the classic spots: Navy Pier, Millennium Park, the bean thing that everyone takes pictures of, even though it's way less interesting in real life. We got sunburned fast and bought knockoff sunglasses from a vendor who wouldn't stop calling us ladies, in this sing-song voice that felt more mocking than polite. By 2:30, we were hot, tired, and starving. Uncle Chris suggested grabbing food before heading toward Wrigley. We didn't want to spend a ton, so we found a Popeyes a few blocks off State Street, near one of those intersections where every storefront looks like it's been there since the 2000s and never updated. The sign was sun-faded, and the AC unit buzzed loud enough to hear from outside. It was wedged between a vape shop and a pawn place that advertised "We buy broken gold." Inside, it was crowded. Lines wrapped halfway to the door, full of families, construction workers, teenagers in Cubs gear. We waited our turn and placed our orders. Me, a spicy chicken sandwich and lemonade. Nina, her usual chicken tenders, extra ranch. Uncle Chris handled the ordering while Nina and I looked for a table. We found one near the back, tucked next to a plastic high-chair station and a blinking soda machine that hadn't been cleaned in what looked like months. Nina's little brother Jeremy sat beside Uncle Chris, quietly unwrapping a biscuit like it was some kind of science experiment. I'm Cam, by the way. I was 17 then, a month out from starting my senior year. I didn't realize at the time that this trip would be one of the last truly normal weeks I'd have before everything got weird at home. But that's a story for another time. Nina's always been like a sister to me. Even though we grew up in different cities, we saw each other at every holiday, every birthday, and FaceTimed weekly once middle school hit. She's sharp, loyal, and has this way of making everyone around her feel like they're the only person in the room. We were mid-meal, halfway through a quiet argument about whether we had time to stop for ice cream before the game, when I noticed the guy come in. Side entrance, white hoodie, dirty sneakers. He moved with this uneven gait, like one leg was just slightly too short or injured. His hair was unkempt, his face shadowed with days-old stubble. It was in the 90s outside, and the way he wore that hoodie, hood up, sleeves pushed down to his wrists, felt intentional. He didn't get in line, didn't even glance at the menu. He walked to the soda machine, filled a clear cup with water, and sat at a two-person table across the aisle from ours. He didn't drink it. He didn't pull out a phone. He didn't eat. He just stared at Nina. At first, I thought maybe he was zoning out, the way some people do when they're tired or hungry or just checked out. But his gaze didn't wander. It stayed locked on her face, then slowly dropped to her shoulders, then back up again. It wasn't subtle. She noticed right away. Her body stiffened. Her chicken tender froze halfway to her mouth, but she didn't say anything. Just shifted in her seat slightly and kept eating, dipping her food in ranch like nothing was wrong. I leaned in. "You okay?" She didn't look at me, just nodded. "Creepy vibes," she muttered. "Really bad." Uncle Chris was focused on Jeremy, who'd knocked over his juice box and was now trying to soak it up with napkins. He hadn't noticed. I didn't want to make a scene. I just kept glancing up occasionally, pretending to adjust my straw or look around a restaurant. Every time I looked, the guy was still staring. Still, expressionless. His cup untouched. A few minutes later, Mina pushed back her chair. "I'm gonna run to the bathroom." She didn't look at anyone, just grabbed her small crossbody bag and walked toward the hallway near the back of the restaurant. The bathrooms were past the mop closet, near the exit sign, one narrow corridor with peeling beige walls and a busted paper towel dispenser sticking out like an elbow. I watched her disappear around the corner. The guy waited about 30 seconds, then stood up and followed. He didn't rush, didn't even pretend to use the restroom himself at first. He just slipped in the hallway, quiet, like he belonged there. I sat frozen, something in my gut twisted. I looked at Uncle Chris. He was wiping ketchup off Jeremy's chin, laughing softly at something he'd said. I should have said something, but I didn't. I waited, watched the clock on my phone tick by. 2 minutes, then 3. Then Nina came back. She wasn't crying, but her face looked different, color drained, lips pressed tight, like she was keeping something in by force. She didn't sit. She walked straight to the table, leaned in between me and her dad, and said, very quietly, "He came out of the women's bathroom." I blinked. "What?" "I was waiting," she said, "because it said occupied." And then he came out from the women's, looked right at me and said, "You only hate me 'cause I scare you," and then walked past. Uncle Chris stood up so fast his chair squeaked. "What did you say?" Nina looked up at him. "There's blood in the sink. Not like a lot, but definitely blood." He didn't ask more, just walked straight to the front counter. We watched him talk to the woman working there, leaning in just enough to be firm but not loud. She listened, then shook her head, said something we couldn't hear. I caught the phrase, "Not her problem," her lips. Meanwhile, the guy was back at his table, drinking from the water cup now, calm, like nothing had happened. No one stopped him. No one asked him to leave. No employee came to check the bathroom. He just sat there, slowly sipping, watching. Uncle Chris came back, jaw clenched. "Let's go." We cleaned up quickly and left through the front door. The second we hit the sidewalk, the air felt heavier. We didn't talk, just started walking down the street, toward Michigan Avenue, trying to get a cab or a train. Uncle Chris was texting someone. I think it was our relatives, maybe arranging for us to meet closer to the stadium. We hadn't made it a full block when I heard the door behind us open. I didn't turn around at first. I didn't have to. He walked past us slowly, on the opposite side of the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, hood still up. And as he did, he turned his head and stared at Nina. Again, long deliberate. Not at any of us. Not at the group. Just her. Nina kept her eyes on the pavement. Her fingers gripped her phone so hard I thought the case might crack. Uncle Chris shifted slightly to stand more between them. The guy walked on, disappeared into the crowd. We didn't say a word until we got to the train station. The rest of the day felt like a blur. The Cubs won. We bought souvenir hats. Jeremy dropped ice cream on his shorts. Nina laughed at something I said, but it didn't reach her eyes. That night, back in Joliet, we were lying in our cousin's guest room, 2 sleeping bags on the floor. The fan was humming and the room smelled like sunscreen and takeout. Nina stared at the ceiling, whispering, "There's no way he was just in there to wash his hands." I didn't answer. "I saw the sink," she said. "It wasn't splatter. It was smeared, like someone wiped at it with their palm, or I don't know. It was dark and sticky." I turned to face her. "Did you tell a manager that part?" She nodded. She didn't care. Just kept saying she wasn't allowed to confront customers. A long pause. Then she said, "I didn't even look at him before he said that. That thing about hating him. I hadn't said a word, hadn't done anything. And somehow, he made me feel like I was the problem." I knew what she meant. That creeping feeling. Like if you get uncomfortable, you must be the one who's overreacting. That if you speak up, you're the one starting something. It's subtle, but sticks. We never reported it. Not to the police, not to corporate. We told our family, but there wasn't really anything to follow up on. No license plate, no name, no proof. Just a weird afternoon, a stare, and a bathroom with blood in the sink. But it didn't feel like nothing. It still doesn't. Sometimes when I'm out with friends, and I see a man staring too long at someone in public, I feel it all over again. That same sick stillness. The unspoken threat. The way nobody ever says anything until it's already too late. It wasn't the worst thing that could have happened that day, but it was enough. Enough that I haven't been able to eat inside a Popeyes since. I moved to St. Louis in the fall of 2017, right after finishing my time with the Army. I'd done 5 years, infantry, and came out with more baggage than job prospects. I didn't have a clear plan, but a guy I used to bunk with during our first deployment offered me a temporary place to crash while I figured things out. His family ran a small landscaping business on the Illinois side, and he thought maybe I could help out. It didn't take long for me to realize I wasn't cut out for it. My knees were already messed up, and being out in the sun all day brought back a kind of heat I thought I'd left behind, so I found myself bouncing around between odd jobs. Warehouse shifts, gig driving, a brief stint moving furniture. Eventually I landed something stable, if not glamorous, working security, armed, mostly late nights. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to get my own place in Baden, and it let me stay in my own head, which sometimes helped and sometimes didn't. My name's Eli, by the way. After about a month with the company, they assigned me to this Popeyes on Natural Bridge Avenue. It wasn't the most popular post, to say the least. Most of the other guards avoided it. Said the clientele was sketchy. Said it had a history. One guy told me a teenager pulled a knife on the cashier over a dipping sauce packet the summer before. I didn't ask for details. I just needed hours. And besides, it was 3 blocks from my apartment. The schedule worked with my community college classes, which I was trying to ease into. Just a couple gin EDS, something to keep me moving. I'd get off class around noon, nap, and then show up at Popeyes by 4 o'clock for the dinner rush. Most days were uneventful, mostly foot traffic from the bus stop nearby, kids from a school down the road, occasional loud arguments over the last biscuit. You get used to filtering out the noise. The store manager, Patrice, was kind enough. Mid-40s, overworked, always looked like she wanted to take a vacation, but couldn't afford one. She liked having me around, though. Said it made the staff feel safer, especially during the evening hours. Once, she gave me a box of tenders for free after I escorted a guy out who kept asking teenagers for their phone numbers. That day in November started out like any other. I pulled into the lot a few minutes early, parked in my usual corner spot with a view of the front and side entrance. The air was cold, early dusk, light just starting to fade, and I lit a cigarette and cracked the window. I remember the sharp wind more than anything else. How it cut through my sleeves, even with the heat on. While I smoked, I noticed a car across the lot. Black BMW. Windows tinted too dark for Missouri plates. Inside was a guy, maybe mid-30s, talking to a group of teens. 4 of them, probably high school age. They huddled around his window like they knew him. The conversation didn't seem heated or anything, just odd, quiet, focused. After about a minute, the kids nodded and walked off in a loose group down the sidewalk, heading west. That's when I saw the driver get out. He wasn't particularly tall, but something about the way he moved made my neck tense. Confident, not rushed, dressed in all black, jeans, coat, boots, with his flat, deliberate energy. He opened the back door of the BMW and leaned in. I could only see his upper half from my angle. He was rummaging around for something. When he stood back up, he held a long object wrapped in a black cloth. He turned slightly, angled away from the traffic, and I caught the shape clearly. Machete, not baseball bat, not a pipe, not even a sheave blade. It was a full-on, jungle-clearing machete. Clean steel, heavy, The kind you don't carry unless you intend to use it. He slid it under his coat and sat back in the driver's seat like it was nothing. I watched. He didn't drive off, didn't move. I finished my cigarette, flicked into the puddle by the curb, and drove my car over to the other side of the building. Clocked in, sat inside of my usual table by the window with a clear line of sight to the entrance. I didn't say anything to Patrice yet. Figure maybe the guy was just showing off to the kids. Still weird, but not illegal. Not unless he brought it inside. 10 minutes went by. I was scrolling on my phone, idly watching people come and go. Mostly quiet that evening. A mother with 2 kids. A guy in construction gear picking up a big order. Patrice arguing with someone on the phone behind counter. Business as usual. Then I saw him again. The guy from the BMW. He walked up from the parking lot. No coat this time, just a tight black hoodie zipped halfway, hands in the front pouch like he was cold. His eyes scanned the side entrance door before pushing it open. Slow, intentional. I sat up straight, phone face down on the table, one hand on the sidearm on my hip, still holstered. He didn't go to the counter. He didn't even glance at the staff. He walked straight into the dining area, eyes sweeping the tables, pausing when they landed on me, stopped dead in his tracks. We locked eyes, and in that instant, everything slowed. He had his right hand under his hoodie, not just resting, gripping, like something was tucked into the waistband of his jeans. My fingers closed over the top of my holster. I didn't draw, not yet, but I stood. He stared at me for what couldn't have been more than 3 seconds, but it felt like a full minute. His jaw tensed. His posture shifted slightly, like he was sizing me up. Then he turned. No words, no threats. He walked out the side door, fast but controlled. I moved toward the window, watch him cross the lot, get back in his car, and drive off without looking back. I never saw him again, but I think about that night often. Because here's the thing, if he'd meant to rob the place, he would have gone for the register. Walked up, flashed the blade, made demands. That's what most guys do when they're desperate. But he didn't. He looked for someone. Came inside with a machete already tucked. And when he saw me, he left. Which makes me think he was expecting someone else. Or worse, someone sent him. I told Patrice what I saw. Told her to check the cameras. She went pale. Said she didn't recognize the guy from the video, but she'd report it to corporate. I don't know if she ever did. The footage probably ended up erased, recorded over by drive-thru orders and biscuit shortages. But that image has stayed burned into my brain. The machete, the calm, the stare, that's what stuck with me most. He didn't look angry. He looked resolved, like he had already made a decision. And it just changed when he saw me. I kept that post for another 6 weeks. Nothing else happened, just the usual arguments, noise, late-night loitering. But I never let my guard down again. I'd sit with my back to the wall, eyes on both entrances, waiting, because you don't bring steel like that unless you're prepared to use it. And I just happened to be the wrong person at the right time. It happened the summer after I graduated high school, right before I moved to San Diego for college. That weird in-between season when the days are long and hot, and it feels like you're holding your breath, waiting for the next chapter to start. I was 18, living at home in Riverside with my mom, trying to stay productive so I wouldn't get swallowed by the waiting. That summer was all about loose ends, doctor's appointments, FAFSA forms, sorting through clothes that didn't fit anymore, and driving school. I put off getting my license way too long. First because I didn't need to drive, then because I was scared of the freeway, then because I was embarrassed about being scared of the freeway. But with college coming up, I figured I should finally get done. The driving school I went to was cheap and basic. Just a narrow office space with 2 small classrooms and a back closet where they kept the keys for the instruction cars. It shared a parking lot with a Popeyes, a payday loan center, and a smoke shop that never seemed to be open. The whole strip looked sun-faded and forgotten, like a place time passed over. We had 30-minute breaks between blocks of class, and most of the students either walked across the lot to Popeyes or just sat in their cars with the AC blasting. Normally, I went to lunch with a group of girls from class, Kendra, Jasmine, and Carla. We weren't tight, but we got along. We'd share fries, complain about the instructors, gossip about whoever kept failing their permit test. I didn't know them outside of that parking lot, but during those 6 weeks, they were my safety net, just familiar enough to feel like a buffer. But that day was different. I'd overslept and barely made it to class in time. No breakfast, not even a granola bar. By the time we hit the lunch break, my stomach was growling so loud I was embarrassed. The other girls were still chatting with the instructor, taking their time packing up. I didn't feel like waiting. I figured I'd order first, grab a table, and text them to meet me when they were done. So I headed out alone. My name's Kayla, by the way. I don't think I said that earlier. Anyway, the heat outside was brutal. One of those dry, static charge days where the air itself feels aggressive. The blacktop shimmered with those weird heat waves, and the sidewalk was too bright to look at directly. I remember squinting, pulling my sleeves down even though I was already sweating. I held my phone in both hands like a shield as I walked, thumb tapping nervously at the screen out of habit. That's when I saw him. He was just there, wandering between the parked cars like he'd forgotten where he left something. At first, I didn't pay much attention. Middle-aged, baggy jeans, oversized black hoodie pulled up over his head, even though it had to be close to 100 degrees out. He wasn't moving fast, but he wasn't exactly slow either. Just this strange, stilted rhythm to his walk, like his steps were lagging behind the rest of his body. I kept walking, but I felt it. That shift in the air, that prickle behind your ears when someone is looking at you too hard. I glanced up, just for a second, and sure enough, his face was turned toward me. Not tilted, not curious, just full-on watching. And then he stopped, froze completely, like someone hit pause on his body. He was standing maybe 15 feet from the Popeyes entrance, just off to the right where the pavement curved around a set of hedges. I hesitated mid-step, not totally sure if I should keep going or change direction and pretend to check something on my phone. But before I could make a decision, he reached into his jacket. My chest tightened. For a split second, I thought he was pulling a weapon. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a knife or a pipe or some kind of weird homemade thing. But what he pulled out made no sense at all. It was a caulk gun, metal, dirty, the kind he used to patch up drywall or seal a bathtub. It wasn't even loaded, just the bare frame, like he'd pulled it from the back of a truck and forgotten the rest. He held it in both hands for a second, letting it hang like a dead weight. Then he raised it and started hitting it into his palm. Slow, deliberate. Thunk, thunk, thunk. I stopped walking. My feet felt glued to the pavement. The sound echoed weirdly across the lot, bouncing between the cars and storefront windows like a slow drumbeat. I locked eyes with him, even though every instinct in my body told me not to. His face didn't move. No smirk, no twitch, nothing. Just those eyes. Fixed, focused, too focused. He wasn't high. He wasn't lost. He was there, entirely, and he was looking directly at me. The pounding got faster. Thunk, thunk, thunk. My legs finally caught up to the fear. I started walking again, quickly, not quite running, but close enough to draw attention if someone had been watching. I cut between two parked SUVs, broke line of sight, and made a sharp angle toward the Popeyes entrance. He turned with me, didn't shout, didn't chase, just rotated like a camera on a swivel, still hitting the caulk gun, still watching. I reached the door and shoved it open so hard the metal handle banged against the glass. The cold air inside nearly knocked the wind out of me. I stepped in fast, letting the door swing shut behind me, and walked straight to the counter without looking back. There were maybe 5 people inside. A mom feeding a toddler mashed potatoes, 2 older guys arguing softly in Spanish at a booth, and a teenage cashier with an overworked expression. I ordered a 3-piece combo. My voice shook so much I had to repeat myself. The cashier blinked at me for a second, then rang it up, asked if I wanted a drink. I said yes without thinking and grabbed the first cup on the counter just to give my hand something to do. Then I turned. He was still there, outside, standing half in shadow near the edge of the lot, still holding the caulk gun, still pounding it, still watching. I took my food and moved to the farthest booth from the window, half hidden behind a dusty potted plant. I didn't touch my meal, just stare at the cup in front of me and pulled out my phone. Text to the group, "Come to Popeyes now. Don't ask, just come." No one replied right away. I thought about calling the cops. I really did. But what would I say? I'm being watched by a guy in the parking lot holding a caulk gun. They'd laugh. Or worse, they'd do nothing. And if they did show up, he'd probably already be gone. So I sat, pretending to scroll, pretending to chew, pretending I was okay. When I finally looked up again, he was gone. No car drove off. No footsteps. No door slam. Just gone. I stood halfway, scanned the lot through the window. Nothing. Only heat, wind, and the distorted shimmer of sunlight bouncing off hoods. 5 minutes later, the girls came in, laughing at something, until they saw my face. The laughter stopped instantly. I waved them over and told them what happened, quietly, under my breath. They were all quiet for a beat. Carla got up and looked out the window. "No one's there now," she said. I nodded, but the feeling hadn't left. That night, I told my mom. She got quiet and told me I should have called someone. I agreed, but even saying the words out loud made it feel unreal. A man, a caulk gun, staring, hitting his hand like he was testing something out. And yet, nothing happened. He didn't touch me, didn't speak, didn't come inside. But it did happen, and I think about it more than I want to admit. I think about how close he got, how casual it all looked from the outside, how if someone had driven by, they would have seen nothing but a girl walking through a parking lot and a man standing still. Just two people, across the lot. It was the second week of May when Micah stopped replying. She worked at the Popeyes off North Decatur Boulevard in Las Vegas. One of those older ones that still had the faded tile floors and the flimsy two-door swing into the back kitchen. The place sat between a pawn shop and a Metro PCS store in half-dead strip mall that always looked hotter than the rest of the city. The asphalt out front shimmered like it was constantly bleeding heat. Micah lived with me for 3 months before everything happened. I moved to Vegas first, got a cheap one-bedroom near Craig Road, thinking it'd just be me for a while. But then Micah called one night, crying about a fight with her mom and a roommate situation that went south back in Reno. I told her she could crash on my couch for a few weeks until she figured things out. I'm Serena, by the way. We've been best friends since 8th grade. Micah's the only person I know who could lose 3 jobs in 2 years and still show up smiling with red vines in her hoodie pocket, talking about how it was probably a sign. She was smart, like scarily intuitive, but she had a habit of giving people too many chances, even the ones who didn't deserve it. When she landed that Popeyes job in late March, she told me she was finally ready to lock in. Said she liked her manager and that the crew didn't feel too high school drama. She even started setting alarms before bed and showing up early, which, for Micah, was monumental. She liked the routine. She liked the way the place smelled when the first batch of biscuits hit the oven. She was starting to settle into herself again. That's why it still doesn't make sense. The last time I saw her was a Tuesday night. She'd just gotten home from a double shift. She was doing extra hours to save up for a used Corolla she'd found on OfferUp. I remember she came in with her visor still on, hair sticking to her neck from the fryer heat, and immediately collapsed onto the couch with a groan. I handed her a water bottle, and she laughed, said I was her emotional support roomie. We watched the end of some reality show and joked about the contestants. And then she said she was going to take a shower. I went to bed a little after that. The apartment felt normal. Nothing weird, nothing off. But the next morning, She was gone. Her blanket was still on the couch, folded. Her work shoes were lined up by the door like always. But her phone was missing from the charger, and the bathroom mirror still had steam streaks, like she'd been up early. At first, I figured maybe she had another early shift and forgot to mention it. I sent her a text, just a simple, "Hey, you good?" with a thumbs up emoji. No reply. I went about my day, worked my shift, ran errands. Around 4 p.m., I texted again. Still nothing. I tried calling, went straight to voicemail, and that was when a knot started forming in my stomach. By midnight, I'd messaged 3 of her co-workers on Instagram. 2 left me on scene. The third, a girl named Taya who'd met her during training, responded around 1 a.m. She said Micah hadn't been scheduled that day, and she hadn't shown up yesterday either. That stopped me cold. I checked our ring cam footage the next morning. Our doorbell catches motion out front, but only stores the last 48 hours unless you pay for the premium plan. I didn't, but I still had the last clip. It was from 5:02 a.m. on Wednesday. Micah stepped out the door wearing leggings and a denim jacket. She wasn't in uniform. No bag, no phone visible in her hand. She hesitated on the porch for a second, like she was waiting. Then she walked off to the right, toward the parking lot, not toward the bus stop, which was to the left. I didn't understand it. It didn't match anything I knew about her routine. She only ever left that early if she had an opening shift, and she never wore denim when working. It didn't make sense. I called the police that afternoon. They took the report, but you could tell they weren't treating it like a priority. Adults go missing all the time, they said. Sometimes people just need space. Same line, different face. By Friday, I started canvassing the area myself. I printed flyers of the FedEx down the street, using the last photo she'd taken, her in front of the Popeyes counter with that goofy fake mustache Snapchat filter. I hit every store in that strip mall. Most workers hadn't seen her. One said they maybe saw someone who looked like her a couple mornings ago, near the dumpster behind a Dollar Tree, but couldn't be sure. That Sunday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Micah's manager, this tall guy named Ramon who I'd met once when picking her up. He sounded rattled. Said he wasn't supposed to call me directly, but thought I should know something. He told me that a guy had come in asking about Micah 3 days before she vanished. Not a customer. Didn't order anything. Just walked in, waited until the lunch rush died down, and then asked if Micah still worked there. When asked why, he said she owed him something. Ramon said the guy wouldn't give his name, and when pressed, he left. But not before standing by the side entrance for nearly 10 minutes, just watching a line. Ramon said Micah mentioned something about it later that day. Just a passing comment. Said some weird dude had been staring, but she didn't seem shaken. He assumed it was nothing. I asked what the guy looked like. Ramon said he didn't get a great look. Older, mid-30s maybe, shaved head, hoodie and jeans, with a scar across the bridge of his nose. That was it. I told the detective, gave him the timestamp, but the store's security camera system had already looped over the footage. No backup, no stills. A week passed, then another. No activity on her bank account, no phone ping, no social media updates. Her ID was still in the drawer by the couch. Her favorite boots were still under the coffee table. Her work apron still had a rolled-up receipt in the pocket with a note that said, "Pick up gloves." And then, almost 2 weeks after she disappeared, I got a text. It came at 3:12 a.m. from a number with no contact name. Just said, "I'm okay. Don't look." I stared at it for so long my eyes burned. It didn't feel like her voice. Micah texted with a rhythm, emojis, typos, run-on thoughts. This was stiff, unnatural. I replied instantly, "Where are you? Please just come home." No response. I called, straight to voicemail. I showed the message to the cops. They traced it to a burner phone that had pinged once near Henderson and then went dead. The trail ended there. It's been 10 months now. Her case is technically still open, but there haven't been any new leads. Her family holds out hope. Her mom still posts prayers and throwback photos every Sunday. I can't look at them anymore. It just makes everything feel worse. Like we're frozen in a moment we can't undo. I still live in the same apartment. I haven't moved her stuff. Her Popeyes visor still hangs on the doorknob. Her favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle and faded cactus print, is still on the sink. I can't bring myself to throw it out. Sometimes I walk by the Popeyes after sunset. The lights inside always look too bright, too yellow. There's a new crew now. I don't recognize anyone, but sometimes I think I see someone pause near the register, just for a second, and I wonder if they know her name, if they've ever heard what happened. The world keeps spinning. Rent still due. My job still sucks. But there's a quiet space in everything now, a little pocket where Micah used to be. And no matter how many times I walk that parking lot or refresh her Instagram, it stays empty. She said she was locking in, but something got to her first.